I would say that there's nothing novel about data security. I think it's just a lot of blocking and tackling. Follow the procedures. I think that one of the biggest threats to breaches is just employee education. You could code the firewall rules, you could block the viruses. You can't block somebody calling, somebody at their desk and asking them for their password, pretending they're someone from the IT department.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever you may be listening, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast. I'm your host, Nate Benson, Director of Media and Public Relations here at 43 North, and we've got a very interesting show this week. We've got Adam Stotz, the CTO of Trove, Predictive Data, here on the show this week. So it's heavy into machine learning, heavy into data, lots of facts, figures, numbers, and predictive data science. So, data science is your cup of tea, then this is the episode for you. Adam's Lancaster native, spent some time out in San Diego, and is now back as the CTO of Trove. And he talks about what Trove does, everything they're working on here at the Innovation Center, and how they're expanding possibly into financial sectors as well. It's pretty cool. So again, if data science is your cup of tea, you know what? I'm not going to waste any more time setting this episode up, and let's jump right into it with Adam Stotz from Trove. Adam, how are you today?
Great, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. So for those who don't know you, give us the quick pitch of who you are and what you do.
So Adam Stotz. So I'm the CTO of Trove Predictive Data Science. Background, me personally, been a Buffalo guy my whole life. Lived for a year and some change in San Diego. But outside of that, born here in Lancaster. Grew up in Lancaster, alma mater at UB. And glad to have this opportunity with Trove to grow a company here in Buffalo, doing what I love.
What was it about San Diego you didn't like? Just was the weather awful? Or you missed,
there's
nothing,
diversity,
rather.
There's nothing I did not like about San Diego. Work brought me out there, and work brought me back to Buffalo. But yeah, I can't say anything bad about San Diego. It's one of my favorite cities in the country.
So before Trove, what was it about technology that you wanted to get into the technology space?
So I've always loved technology as a kid. I got my first computer in 8th grade. Instantly became kind of fascinated with how it worked. So started kind of hacking around AOL back in the days of like chat rooms on AOL with monthly dial-up subscriptions and things. And got into how they work, how to program them, and I kind of knew that kind of computers was what I wanted to be involved in, and that kind of graduated into my major at UB. I was an undergrad in computer engineering. After undergrad, I started working at Kubrick, locally here in Buffalo, defense contractor, and that kind of introduced me not just to software but to data science as well, and that kind of became my graduate passion then at that point was data science. And I think Trove is kind of the perfect culmination of those two areas. We build data science related software.
So I guess that gets me into my next question. Can you kind of break down for the audience, what it is Trove is what problems are Trove trying to fix or solve for businesses out there?
So I would say it's hard to describe an analytics company in general, because analytics means a lot of things to a lot of different people. That's one of the reasons we put predictive data science in our name. We wanted to try to distinguish the types of analytics that we're building for our clients. They're predictive in nature, right? We're not looking to build dashboards of prior quarterly sales goals and things for our clients. We focus on complex problems that can leverage machine learning and volumes of data that they might be collecting from sensors and other sources, call centers, et cetera, to make predictions for their businesses. So if you look at a lot of, Gartner reports, industry reports, et cetera, businesses that are able to operate from more of a predictive view, right, get prescriptive with their operations and things, are seeing a lot of gains. So we're building software solutions that encode these machine learning algorithms to help them drive efficiencies in their business, the way they run their business.
Right overhead for some folks, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. So
so what are some of the examples of problems this Trove is solving every day and kind of give us the case studies?
Sure. So we started off in the utility business, the utility practice. And utilities over the last, 5 years, 7 years, began rolling out smart grid, smart meters. So they're getting flooded with data, kind of like telecom started getting flooded with smart meter data, right? It's kind of a big new source of very high resolution, customer specific, detailed data. They don't really know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. So one example of what we do is we build load forecasting analytics to help utilities predict down to an individual customer level how much energy usage they're going to have by hour, by day. And there's a lot of ways that utilities then can turn that knowledge into efficiencies in their operation.
And that's essentially because people are pretty they can easily be determined like what your routine is, so to speak, on a daily basis based on your energy usage, right?
You would think. It definitely has its challenges.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in traffic, you might get home an hour later. That can throw a forecast off, right? But utilities traditionally looked at every residential customer like a cookie cutter. So our models will look at you individually, and yes, like we will find those patterns of everyday kinds of behavior that you have, but your everyday behavior is very different than even your neighbors could be, right? So that's where our models start providing some different kinds of insights that utilities typically weren't looking at.
So talk about like the early days of Trove. Like how did you guys, because this stemmed out of Kubrick, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So yes, from the fact that Kubrick was our seed investor.
Okay.
And our initial technical team, our initial software IP was a part of Kubrick's investment into Trove. Mm-hmm. The other half of that answer is that before Trove was Trove, it was actually GridGlow. And GridGlow was founded by Isaiah Sudit, who was kind of the original founder, original CEO down in Florida. He's a serial entrepreneur. So he was working in the telecom space, mm-hmm. saw this influx of smart grid data into the utility practice, to the utility industry, and thought that would be it would create an interesting opportunity, right, to use technology and data science to solve. Isaiah's not being a technical person, more of a business and relationship guy. He needed a technology partner, and that's where the connection to Kubrick happened. So the technology is a spin out of Kubrick and some things that we were building there. But the concept of doing data science work in the utility space was Isaiah's original idea.
There's so many startups out there now in the data space. What sets Trove apart from some of the other players dealing with, or in selling their services, in the data landscape of things?
Yep. So I would say that the first difference is we don't just bring, let's call them models. We don't just bring models to the table. We started off with building a very robust consumer database of people across the country. Because analytics, I still believe every analytic is garbage in, garbage out. Every analytic needs good fuel. And if you look at, go back to the utility example, they have great data up to the meter, right? They don't have any data about the people behind the meter. So when we take our client's data set and fuse it with our Trove database, we now have an extremely rich set of variables that we can model against. So that's our first differentiator, is that we kind of bring our own data and we know how best to mine that data with machine learning to drive some new value. I would say the second big difference is that there's a lot of analytical platform players out there, folks that try to sell a big analytics platform, large kind of upfront cost, implementation, et cetera. And then they kind of leave it to their client. Now you can just do a billion things with it.
Yeah,
figure it out. And
then it sits there and they don't do anything with it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just another piece of dormant, another dormant platform just sitting in the IT space. So we actually don't sell a platform. We sell specific little modules we call solvers. That's what we sell. Now they run on a platform. They can run on a platform they already have. Trove has its own platform that can really scale these solvers. But the value that's getting created for these clients is really solving specific use cases, and that's what we focus in on. We have a very focused perspective on understanding what those high priority use cases are, either applying or building a solver to solve that use case, and then we figure out how to deploy it. So the client's not left with something they need to figure out. We're managing that whole process for them and showing them what the ROI is of implementing that in practice.
So they're really able to put the data to use right out of the gate.
We're kind of in a partnership with them, hand in hand, really defining the value of the data in business terms. And the data science is what connects those two endpoints.
The data has been around since computers have been around. Obviously, getting the data from what you're doing is nothing new. Is the machine learning aspect of everything? Is that what really changed the game? So allowed companies like you guys to do what you're doing?
I think that it's a new technique to solve a different class of problems, in my opinion. Machine learning excels in areas that you can't define the if-then rules to, right? So how do I know when I look at you that you're Nick, right? I can't really describe in a set of rules why I think that. I just think that. And I've seen you a number of times and know what you look like. That's what machine learning does. It learns by example and can do things in kind of mimic the way that humans learn by example to do new things, where it's very hard to, define the sets of rules or logic to make a particular conclusion or from a software perspective.
So you mentioned, used utilities as an example. What types of industries, can Trove be applied to essentially? Is it really like, name an industry and you could figure it out?
So data science is pretty universal, right? Every industry, I think, in the world talks about data science and analytics now. As an early stage company, it's important not to get pulled in too many different directions because a big part in providing value to a client is really understanding their domain as well. Right. So that's why we've maintained a very strong core focus in utility. But those analytics do play outside of the utility space. Kind of at the heart of everything we do is forecasting consumer behavior. Right, so we're now taking that into the financial space as an example. We have a couple, what I would call lighthouse clients in that space that we're in the process of developing some new solutions for. So financial is going to be a new vertical that I think you'll see some news announcements about from us this coming year.
Have you guys figured out where Bitcoin's going to be in like 6 months? Because that'd be really helpful for me.
I think now that would be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, versus this time last year. Good grief.
Yeah, that's been a highly variable currency.
Stay away.
Just say that.
Machine learning and data in general, though, has certainly it's been in the headlines. 2018 was kind of a definitive year for data breaches and misuse of data and what have you. How do you navigate those waters? And how do you ensure that customers are understanding data and that they're using data properly for their customers? Because obviously you're kind of like in between everything, right? Yeah.
I would say that there's nothing novel about data security. I think it's just a lot of blocking and tackling. Yeah. Follow the procedures. I think that one of the biggest threats to breaches is just employee education. You could code the firewall rules, you could block the viruses. You can't block somebody calling somebody at their desk and asking them for their password, pretending they're someone from the IT department. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's really kind of the technology of the firewalls, sensors, stuff like that, but also employee education. And I think it's the same as it has been for the last decade. It's just blocking and tackling and following the rules when it comes to securing data. I think that some of the big data breaches has raised a lot of public awareness into the types of data that is actually being collected on them. I think that not everybody in the general population understands that when you use your Shoppers Club card, the grocery store doesn't care about you saving that nickel, right? They care about knowing what you're buying.
Right.
So they can target you with ads and coupons and things. Same thing with Facebook, right? Facebook is not free.
Yeah.
The product that they're monetizing is you. It's your data. And I think that it's unfortunately been some of kind of the dominant news stories about data breaches that's kind of raising that awareness to kind of the next level. And I'm kind of curious to see how far that goes in terms of data availability and additional regulations we would have to kind of abide by to be able to work with that data.
Well, it certainly always makes headlines, but you don't see. I mean, there has been protests in the streets, right? For my data has been breached. Equifax customers. There was 1 billion people's information was just kind of gobbled up, and like where did it go? And it's the first time I've even thought about it since until I had this conversation. So it really is fascinating. And especially when you look at kind of the government level, just how much of a misunderstanding there really is. Like, Google CEO was testifying the other day, and I'm sure you saw the headline where he was explaining why certain trends come up in a Google search.
And,
that's where we're still at on the consumer level.
And that they don't manufacture the iPhone.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly interesting. Now the machine learning's obviously had from an industry standpoint a breakout year as well, and the idea of kind of the potential for machine learning bias, when predicting, everything that machine learning does, so how can you walk us through, as a data scientist, how you ensure, the machine's learning correctly, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yep. So there's actually, there's an interesting story. I don't remember if it was this year or last year, about Amazon. Yeah. And they applied a machine learning model to score resumes. And it actually became a very sexist model. It was favoring males over females, given very similar resume characteristics. And they couldn't, after tuning it and post-processing it, they couldn't get it to not be sexist. So they pulled the plug on it. Yeah. I think that that's kind of a fun little anecdotal story. But there's also a little bit of a risk I see in the industry now around this concept of a citizen data scientist, about having somebody that doesn't understand data science using a plug-and-chug cloud-based service to pump a bunch of data into, get a result, and put that result into practice without really understanding what just happened, right? And that if you take the results of these models, you do need to understand that you haven't kind of violated any of the assumptions that the theory behind these algorithms have on applying it to particular types of data or characteristics of data. So, I would say, if we fast forward 20 years down the road, yes, I think that, a data scientist's job might look very differently than what it does today. But I don't think technology is there yet. And I think that there is there's the big platform players are pushing it. Like, our service is easy to use. Plug a data set in and you'll start getting predictions. But that is a little bit scary to me if a business is operating on that without really understanding how it's going to get produced. So
not everything should be kind of consumer-fied, right? Where anyone has access to that vital information or the ability to get that information without. I mean, right. In your title, there's the scientist part of it. Like, you, as a scientist, you understand how to, scientifically look at something. Versus like me, I might be tech savvy, but I certainly don't know ethically maybe how to do something.
I mean, I think it has to be proportional to risk, sure. Right? I mean, if you could build your own helicopter, would you do it and would you fly it?
Right.
So
sure, I can weld, but that doesn't necessarily mean
doesn't mean that, right? Because there's a risk that you've made a mistake and don't know, right? So I think that when we deliver these solvers that I kind of spoke about before, we bundle our data scientists with it, and 99% of the time it's a managed service, and our data scientists are making sure that thing is calibrated and working the way it should and providing reliable results that our clients can operate on.
And you kind of see that in similar problems in a lot of industries. I'll take journalism, for example. The citizens being journalists, all of a sudden, it's like, yes, you can capture something on your iPhone and report it as if it's fact, but that doesn't necessarily mean you actually understand what you're what you're reporting on, so to speak. That's the difference between professionals and kind of the consumers.
It's like WebMD and going to the doctor, right?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know what's wrong with me based on WebMD. So how did Buffalo become kind of the HQ, so to speak, of Trove? Obviously, there's the Kubrick connection, but when you think predictive data science and machine learning, Buffalo is not necessarily the first place that comes to mind. So that's very interesting to me.
So I would say that the first year of our company really had an impact on that decision. When you're just starting off, you don't know when you're going to get hit with a wave of work, right? And you don't have the resources to maintain a staff waiting for that wave of work. So being next door to Kubrick and having that resource battery of software folks and data science folks that we can tap into and leverage when we need was a huge advantage to stay lean while we were kind of growing revenue and gaining our own kind of critical mass. So that played a huge part in the decision to HQ here. A second major factor in that decision was the university system in the area. I think that Western New York has an extremely strong academic ring around it. I would say it rivals any other area in the country.
You just draw a circle 75 miles around. I mean, you've got Toronto, Rochester,
exactly.
Big names.
I would say that Buffalo is definitely at its early stages in terms of being a non-Rust Belt tech kind of city. But at the same time, I think it has some key ingredients that could eventually get us, to one of those recognized name brand cities for kind of work we do. It'll be a process. It'll be an evolution. But I think we have some of the right ingredients here.
So Trove is doing highly technical work, and one of the misnomers of Western New York sometimes is like, oh, is the workforce there for that? Like, so in your experience, there hasn't been that miss, so to speak, of like being able to find competent computer scientists to do the work Trove is doing, right?
That again, it's a yes and no answer. Yeah. It's been easy I wouldn't say easy. We've been able to get very talented junior folks out of college. I think we have a really talented group of young folks that perform above, kind of their years of experience. But when it comes to the more seasoned senior level technical folks, I see a gap in Buffalo there. We have not been able to find those folks here. And we've hired folks across the country when it comes to some of the more senior level folks.
What could change that? Would it be a critical mass of similar companies doing what you guys are doing? Is it like obviously there's no secret sauce, but
I think that I think there's a few angles to this response. I think that Buffalo as an enjoyable city to live and a great place to raise a family plays a factor in relocating folks to Buffalo, and I think that Buffalo, just economically, from a lifestyle perspective, is making some really great strides. I've lived here my whole life. I see Buffalo changing in a big way. Yeah. I think a second part of that answer is as more tech companies establish themselves here and grow, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, those junior folks that we're retaining now out of the university are those mid-level folks. They are those senior level folks. So I think that time and just our ability to retain young talent is going to be vital to that.
So what's next? What's the next year looking like, for Trove? You've moved kind of from the suburbs downtown here to the Innovation Center. You did that in 2018. What's 2019 looking like for you guys?
So 2019, I think that we're kind of establishing our 2019 goals right now. I think that continuing to be a part of the ecosystem here on the medical campus, the Innovation Center, probably deepening some of those relationships. I think we're looking very forward to. I talked about the financial market. I think that opening up a vertical outside of utility is going to be kind of a key initiative for us this year, and we're really excited to see what kind of impact we can have in that financial market.
I think there's one or two small financial institutions based out of Buffalo.
Just a couple. And I think that, to us, it's about sustained growth. It's about steady, sustained growth. I think that we're very careful not to take on more work than we're comfortable to deliver on. To us, reputation and our brand is key in making sure we deliver on what we promise. So we've turned deals away because we weren't comfortable being able to deliver under the timelines that they wanted. So to us, it's about that, steady, slow growth, looking at, hopefully hiring some more talented folks onto the team here in Buffalo, and opening up that vertical and kind of getting involved more in the community here.
Well, if people want to get involved or learn more about Trove or learn more about you, how can they do so?
Feel free to reach out to us. Our website, I would say, is we're going to go through some website updates to kind of describe a little better what we do. Our contact information is on there. I would say we're always at the Innovation Center kinds of events. We're at the network. We're at the Beakers and Beer. Come talk to us here. Yeah, come visit. Come to a Beakers and Beer event down here and come talk to us.
Always a good event, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We'll check in with you guys down the road a little bit.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks,
I want to thank Adam for joining me on the show this week. If you want to learn more about Trove, head on over to their website, trovedata.com. That's TROVE data.com. And you can learn all about their predictive science technologies and how they can be implemented possibly in your business. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this week. Remember, you can ask your smart speaker to play the latest episode of Latitude, the 43 North podcast, or make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. I've noticed a few more reviews coming in, and I appreciate all the kind words. If you have any suggestions for this show, shoot me an email, podcast@43north.org, and I'll be sure to take your ideas into consideration. Thank you so much for listening. For 43 North, I'm Nate Benson, and we'll see you at the next one.